Alright, 7 o'clock, we'll call the meeting to order. Downa, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Record show, all board members are present. Mr. Board, has public notice been given?
Yes, it is.
Public comments. For policy 0167.3, anyone wishing to participate in the period of public comment must be a resident of the Richland School District, the parent or legal guardian of an enrolled district student or an enrolled district student. Persons wishing to participate must physically be present at the meeting and must register in advance. A total time allotment of 30 minutes will be given for public comments. Each participant shall be given 3 minutes to address the board. A translator may be used to translate verbal communication to the board. If such translation services are used, 6 minutes shall be given to that participant, with only the first 3 minutes being designated to the total time allotment. Speakers are not permitted to make inflammatory comments, use inappropriate language or gestures, attack specific persons, or make a specific person the subject of their remarks. Please see policy 0167.3 for a complete list of requirements and restrictions. If a person is unable to adhere to these rules, they may be directed to end their comments. Mrs. Steele, do you get any sheets?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. On to the district administrator's report.
Okay, just a couple of announcements. One, this Thursday, we will have our Personnel and Negotiations and Budget Development Committee meet at 6 p.m. and our Buildings and Property to follow. Be on the lookout for the exact time of that. Will likely be at 7:15, but we may adjust it just a little bit one way or another once the personnel agenda gets finalized. But personnel will go first at 6, Buildings and Property to follow. Secondly, board members and community, we did have the community forum held at the Phoenix Center last Monday. It was a collaboration of the city, county, Simons, and the school district. There is a link to that presentation both on this agenda item in board docs as well as on the main board docs site, right next to the Morris Leatherman survey presentation that was given. I would encourage you as board members to, if you get an opportunity, to take a look at that, just so that you understand the information that I presented and that we're on the same page from a communication standpoint and the way we present information. Thirdly, our new website was recently launched, and so you may have noticed a little different feel to the richland.k12.wi.us website. Still kind of a fluid work in progress, so if there's things that you don't find right away and after navigating around, please let us know. We believe everything is on there, but it may have a different flow to it. And by the same token, if you get any feedback from parents or staff or personnel in the community about that, please let us know. Emily Dolan specifically let us know about any good, bad, or indifferent. This is difficult to find. I can't find this. Those kinds of things. And then lastly, just to let the board and public know, we did have one candidate turn in their write-in candidacy papers for Area 1 East. Lee Van Lendijk has turned in his papers and will be running as a write-in, so that means we do have one official candidate for Area 1 East, which again is the rural area vacated by Mrs. Wertz's decision to non-run. Any questions from the board regarding any of that?
Safe to assume that we are still accepting other potential write-in candidates?
Yes, we are. Yes. Thank you.
All right, board member reports.
Curriculum met on February 8th. We did receive a student services update from Lisa Goff on the Check and Connect program. That was a new program this year, and it has been very successful. She had a lot of good things to say, and they were actually featured in the Spotlight article that went out to, I think she said 14,000 people. So they look to continue to recruit and hopefully grow this program in the future. We also received the RCHS curriculum pilot update report. Mr. Troxel gave a report on that, which again, the teachers that are involved in that leadership program have, I think, been surprised at how quickly the program is going, and they had a lot of good things and ideas to make it better moving forward. We also received a report on the AGR mid-year report, which will come to the full board on the 26th, and then Sherry Johnson gave us an update on the title programming.
The policy committee also met on Thursday, the 8th. We went through several of the policy updates through Neola. The majority of those were just technical changes. We do have some that we need to revisit yet. We also specifically are looking at policy 7250, the commemoration of school facilities. We have more research to do on that. That's going to be an ongoing process. Looking at potential for naming rights and how we're going to coordinate that, and what are the criteria going to be able to do those various things. And also policy 7510, which is use of district facilities. We have some further work to do on that, but essentially that is a staff benefit, and what are the rules and regulations that need to be placed for those facilities to be available for families.
Thank you. Food service report.
So Ms. Pratch, Jody Pratch, our food service director, was unable to present tonight. That will be presented at the next board meeting on the 26th. And I will also use this opportunity to remind our board and our public that our next board meeting, the 26th, will be held at the intermediate school. Normal starting time of 7 o'clock, and Jody Pratch will be presenting at that meeting at the intermediate school.
Is there a motion to approve the prior meeting minutes of January 22nd, 2024?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Billion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second made by Mrs. Wertz. Discussion? Mr. Dillon?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye. All right, the approval of statement of cash.
I move we approve the statement of cash dated February 7th, 2024.
Motion made by Mr. Dowdna. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Dickman. Mr. Bosworth, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I would add that we have received a levy payment from all of our municipalities for January, and we'll have another one coming in February, and then at some point around the middle of the year.
Discussion? Ms. Troxel?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Approval of invoices.
I move we approve Community First Bank General Checking Account checks number 85968 through number 86032, ACH number 232400882 through 232401025, and EFT number 202300060 through 202300066 for a net total of $763,139.62. This is for the purpose of general operating costs of the district.
Motion is made by Mr. Dowdna. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Huntemer. Mr. Bosworth, anything else you'd like to add?
Yep, I have 4 things I would point out to you. On page 2 of the board book check detail report, near the top there's a payment to Bethlehem Lutheran 4K, $4,133. We're going to make 3 payments to them this school year. This is the second one, and that's based on student enrollment, the dollar value that we send. The second thing on page 3 and 4, maybe throughout here, you may see some payments for band trip in some large numbers. just to point out, that's all money that comes in from student fundraisers or parents or donations, then it goes back out. Third thing I would point out is on page 12. Very near the top, you'll see an expenditure for welders. You may remember a few meetings ago, we accepted a nice donation. The foundation helped out with that. And one of those donations was earmarked for tech ed equipment. So just wanted to point out that we've reaped the benefits of that. It was a really nice donation. And then finally on page 13, the fourth thing I'll point out to you, about halfway down there, you'll see 2 payments to Morris Leatherman, essentially a down payment and a final payment to wrap up the survey.
Discussion?
Just one clarification on the ACH check numbers. Does that go to 1028, that's what's in the board, or is it 25, which you stated?
Was that the second?
Yeah, the ACH numbers.
I was reading from the sheets. So.
I think just looking at the checkbook detail would be the 1028.
Yeah, mine is 1025.
So we'll need to
So I
accept
motion, amend that motion.
So it's 1025 is what's in here.
Yep, it should be 1028.
28. All right, so is there a motion then with changing 232-401-1025 to number 232-401-1028?
Was the amount correct with the extra checks added in there?
The amount matches.
Second, the original
Bring me the motion to make a second.
I did. Neil did.
I'll still second.
Okay. Any other discussion? Mr. Dowden?
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, consent agenda, Mrs. Steele?
Motion to accept the donation of portable AED with a new cabinet valued approximately $1,800 from the Cardinal Glass per policy 7230. Motion to accept the donation of gloves and hats valued approximately $200 from Coats for Kids to the Richland Center Primary School per policy 7230. Motion to accept the donation of clothing and outside accessories valued at approximately $225 from Park Street Christian Church per policy 7230. Motion to accept the donation of money to Partner School valued at approximately $65,000 from an anonymous donor per policy 7230. And motion to approve the budget revisions from the 23-24 fiscal year as presented in accordance with the provisions of the Wisconsin Statute 6595A. This shall require at least a 2/3 majority vote. And that is it.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda items?
I'll make a motion.
Motion made by Mrs. Wertz. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Oswald. Discussion? Mr. Hunter?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
On behalf of the Board of Education, I'd like to thank Cardinal Glass, the Richland Center Kiwanis Club, Park Street Christian Church, and the anonymous donor for their generous donations. Is there a motion to approve the modified agenda?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Baling. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded, Ms. Troxel. Discussion? Mrs. Dickman?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye. All right, on to information and discussion items, district transfers and vacancies.
So you'll notice in the PDF for the transfers and vacancies of support staff, we do still have a couple of cross-categorical aide positions as well as a night custodian position open and actively looking for applicants. We do have all of our non-union jobs and assignments filled after we have hired Morgan Beinborn to be our nurse. Morgan started last week with us, and if you get a chance to meet her, you will find that she's an absolute delight. And then in our certified position, we do have the world language position due to the recent resignation. It is posted. The board will be acting on an option for overload position to cover the third quarter of world language later on in tonight's meeting. But that is our one position. Moving forward, we are posting for 24-25 vacancies. That's happening this week. Those will be posted for a couple of weeks, and then I anticipate in early March we will start to have some positions for the 24-25 school year, and we will put those on a different PDF to make sure that you can keep track of everything. Any questions from the board?
All right, the Q2 disciplinary report.
Okay, so board has seen this. It's very similar to what you saw in Q1 with just a little bit more data. There are 3 attachments. The first is the total offenses, which is also a chart in the agenda item itself. This shows total offenses by quarter for each of the last 3 years. In blue, you'll see the 21-22 data for each of the 4 quarters. Orange is 22-23 data. And then the green is the 23-24 data, of which we obviously only have Q1 and Q2 data for. You'll see that total offenses are up slightly from the previous 2 years as it relates respectively to Q1 and Q2. Some of that could be just some consistencies in how we're reporting data and making sure that everything is recorded in Skyward. Some of it could be other. Then the other 2 attachments, there's a chart. Discipline data 23-24 Q2 charts in a PDF, and then the raw data is in the third PDF. High school administration as well as primary school administration is here tonight to answer any specific questions. Here are just some things that I saw in the data. If you look at the charts, again, Q1 is shown in orange so that you can follow what Q1 has done for each of the last couple of years and this year. And then Q2 is shown in blue for all of the different offense groups that we have since the building configuration started in 21-22. So again, just kind of pointing some things out that I noticed. You'll see that harassment offenses as a whole, I know it's broke down into several different more specific concerns, but harassment offenses is still a concern. Our bullying is trending down. But the targeting of students based on their ethnicity or sexual harassment are both slightly up. So bullying down, but the different targeting groups are slightly up. Again, we're keeping an eye on those and certainly aware of it. Drug use and those offenses are down dramatically from Q1. So if you look at that, you'll see that the orange line is significantly less than what it was from Q1, so that's a good sign. However, verbal confrontations are up significantly, both over Q1 and over the 22-23 data as a whole. School threats, those are certainly up over previous years, but almost identical to Q1. Again, we know that this has been something that we've seen this year specifically, something that we're continuing to educate our students about, but still see some threats that are going on. And that can be both threats to our school and threats to other students. And then finally, other, what I would deem to be more minor violations, our code of conduct, classroom code of conduct, our student handbook, defiance of authority, profanity, and then personal electronic violations, which is cell phones. All of those are following relatively similar patterns to what we've seen in the past. So, again, happy to answer any questions that you may have or things that you see as it relates to the charts. And again, our administration is here as well, or at least most of them.
Any questions from the board?
Just one, between quarter one and quarter two, has there been any, like different methods of trying to prevent some of this stuff? I mean, I think of like cell phones but it could apply to all of them. Like, is there anything we put in place, expecting a difference between quarter one and quarter two, or is it just kind of continued like education to staff and things like that? I wasn't aware of any, but if you have any.
High school, you want to go first?
Great question. I think education and encouraging staff to be as consistent as possible is huge for us. There was we sent out our own survey to staff asking about some of the discipline procedures, and there were still some asks that staff become even more consistent, which is what we're trying to always do. So that is super important. In terms of new programs since quarter one, not really. Maybe if I'm missing something, Liz can jump in here, but just education is a big piece. I know with our threats, Mr. Board alluded to it, but we continue to educate about threats and what they look like, what they sound like. Just from a safety standpoint, I encourage students not to do those things.
And I would agree, as we see an uptick of something, or we are seeing things more, we call the students to the auditorium and have a meeting and just review and reteach and remind them.
Thank you.
Amy, do you?
We have
cell
done
phones
more
are-
with small groups. Thankfully, no, we don't have much with cell phones. Is that what you said?
Yeah. but-
Okay. But we've done more with small groups. Mrs. Iverson primarily leading that, and then with a few of our pals, additional check-ins to start the morning and try to be a cheerleader to help their day start right and help them reset if needed.
I'll just add a little bit that, we put an emphasis on bullying, right? And we see the results of that, but then that comes at the expense of something else. And obviously, we would love to have a world where there are no disciplinary offenses, but we're not quite there yet. Mr. Lemke also alluded to training staff. I think that's just as important. I think one of the things you'll see in the next agenda item from Mr. Kember is that in the staff surveys, our staff don't necessarily view staff discipline, the discipline that they're expected in the classroom is necessarily super consistent. So
Sure.
I think that if we can get good consistencies within our classroom, then that helps have better impact in our buildings.
Any other questions from the board? All right, on to the school perception survey results.
So with that, as Mr. Kember is getting ready there, just kind of some background information. In November, for the second year in a row, we sent out the school perceptions survey to all of our staff. We have just over 200 staff members. And we were hoping for over 90% participation. We hit 91% this year, last year. I'll let Mr. Kember reveal the results this year. But needless to say, we had good turnout. This gives us some really good information on what our staff are feeling from a perception standpoint, how they feel their day goes, discipline, things like that. We also asked some very district-specific questions at the end of this to try to answer some of the questions that they have regarding high-quality staff and insurance and those kinds of things. But without any further ado, I think I'll turn it over to the expert in this matter, Mr. Jerry Kember. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. And thanks for those of you that are school board members. That's hard work. I understand. I'm the superintendent of schools in La Crosse, so after I retired, I've been working with school perceptions for the last 8 years. My name is Jerry Kember, and so I'm going to flip through a bunch of things here, but tell you a little bit about school perceptions, who we are, what we do, why we do it. A little bit about what your teachers, staff, not just teachers, all staff. We survey everybody. Maintenance, bus drivers, lunchroom, everybody got surveyed. But tell you a little bit about what they had to say, how the results turned out, and then time for questions. By the way, in the process here, if I say anything or you see anything that you want to know more about, we don't have to wait till the end. You can just raise your hand and I'll call you in right then and there, okay? Keep it informal. So, who are we? Well, we've been around since 2002, so we're 21 years old. I've done 10,000 or more. Actually, that number 10,000, I keep telling the owner, that number's really low. We're much higher than that. It's probably closer to 15 to somewhere between 15 and 20,000 of these surveys that we've done in the last 21 years. We've helped a lot of districts navigate strategic planning. That's the whole purpose in doing this perception work, is how do you plan for continuous improvement without good data to tell you what the needs are. Otherwise, we're working off just the perceptions of a few people. And we want everybody's input. We've helped over 900 districts navigate strategic planning and also for the referendum planning process. A lot of districts use us mainly for referendum planning. However, we have a good number of districts like yours that want to get the perceptions of their staff, their community, their parents, and their students. We have all those surveys available as well. By the way, your district subscribes to an annual subscription, which gives them access to 22 different kinds of surveys. 5 or 6 different ones for staff, 5 or 6 different ones for parents, and another set for students. So your district does a great job of examining what the perceptions of all your stakeholders are. So Steve said, response rate. I have to tell you, I work with a lot of districts. No one I have ever worked with has gotten a 97% response rate. So congratulations to you. Whatever Steve and Emily are doing, it's working. They're getting staff to answer, so that's great. 97%, that's amazing. Typically we see between 65 to 75%, so 97 is huge. I asked Steve if these percentages here pretty much reflect your staffing, and it does. So, 39% of those responding were from the high schools, 27% from your primary school, and 26% from your intermediate school. And of course, we also survey your administrators in district office, or all the district office staff as well. Then we want to know, okay, so who are you that did this survey? Obviously, the biggest group is typically the classroom teachers, and so they are. 43% of those responding were classroom, but you see we have everything up there. And we get a few people, people are always concerned about anonymity. This is a totally anonymous survey. And the fact that you work with us, a third party, and not try to do this yourselves is a wise decision, because people get suspicious when you build your own. And so we're unbiased. The numbers are what they are, and we don't skew them one way or the other. But you can see all the different people that participated, but not surprisingly, the largest group is your classroom teachers, because that's the greatest number of staff that you have. How many years you've been working in the district? We want to know that too. You're doing pretty well. Over almost a third of your employees have been here 10 years or more. That's great. And over 50%, 6 years or more. So those are great numbers as well. Good for you. You're holding staff. That's not an easy thing these days. We do a thing called index analysis. You can interchange the word index with categories. We come up with 5 different categories that I'll show you in a minute. And about 4 to 6 questions on the survey feed into these 5 categories. And here they are. Academics, engagement, support, student experience, and staff experience. So this is the second year you've done the staff survey with us. And so you'll see the first column is the current score based on a strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree. 5, 4, 2, 1. How come there's no 3? Well, we find that if you leave a neutral number, you get a neutral answer. Someone's in a hurry, they don't want to think about the question too much, so I'll just say, I'll put don't know or not sure, unsure. We purposely try to move people in one direction or the other, so that when it's all said and done, we have something to work with. If everybody, I'll show you later on what happens when you have a neutral option. It doesn't work well. But academics, are we supporting our students, teaching and learning? How engaged are your staff with what they're doing, how they contribute? Are they getting the support they need? What's the student experience? Are they accepted, respected, and supported? And what's the staff experience? Are they accepted, respected, and supported? Another thing you're going to see is, I'll come back to the third column, I'm going to jump over to the fourth column where it says comparison. So because we've done literally, as you saw earlier, thousands of these, the one thing we can do that most survey companies can't do is because we take your data and we compare it to the thousands of other staff surveys that we've done. All right? So those are percentile scores, comparison percentile scores. So for example, in academics, that 44th percentile, what that means is 44%, there's two ways to say this, 44% of the districts that also did the staff survey didn't do as well as you did. However, if I get the number right, 56% did better. You can look at it one way or the other, okay? So the comparison score, I think, is an important one. Percent change. This is your percent change from last year's survey to this survey. Not concerning at all. When we look at this data and the research that we use, anything less than 5% is statistically insignificant. Okay? So you stay below that insignificant number, 5%, through all of these. However, be very upfront about this. Yes, you came down slightly from your previous survey, slightly. I think Steve thinks that maybe his first year was his honeymoon year. I don't know if that's true or not. I think you're still on a honeymoon, Steve. Those are good scores. Well done. Okay, so those are our categories or our indexes. Now I'm going to go through a lot of items. And again, their choices were strongly agree, agree, disagree, or strongly disagree. No neutral option. And again, don't know doesn't apply. They're not even included in the calculation of the scores. So these are the sections that the staff saw. One of them was called Workday. So here's the responses to Workday. And we put them in order of your percentile scores. We could have done by averages. We chose on this chart to do it in terms of your percentile scores. So I have a healthy working relationship, very strong, 80%. You know, I scored 80% of the other districts taking it. I feel comfortable. Sharing input and concerns. Most days I look forward to going to work, and I have access to the technology support. All very good scores. But as we go into the next set of work days and start going down, I have the technology I need to do my job. I think it's interesting to note, going back to that last one, I have access to the support I need, good, but some feel they don't have all the technology they need. I feel safe at work. You look at that and you go, wow, 91% said agree or strongly agree. How can 91% only be in the 29th percentile? That's simply because, again, that's a comparison score to everybody else. So everybody else was obviously very high on that, and that's why. That's how you explain that. Sometimes people ask that question. The amount of work I am asked to do is reasonable, manageable. 70% agreed, 26 percentile. I have materials and supplies I need to do my job well. 81% agreed, but puts you in the 15th percentile on that one. I know you have a referendum possibly coming up in the spring, so maybe that will help you answer. Staff, now the next section was called environment. Those questions were staff input is valued. 78% agreed, 75th percentile. Our staff handles student discipline in a consistent manner, 58% in the 59th percentile. Discipline practices, which I just heard you talking about, are effective, consistent perhaps. Strongly agree, 54%, only a little bit over half. Puts you in the 55 percentile for what it's worth. Discipline practices are a concern every district I work with. That's not an uncommon response at all. In the last year, I received useful feedback to help improve my work. 77% agreed, 49 percentile. More on the environment. Information important work is shared. I have opportunities for training, professional development to improve my work. All students are respected for their values and beliefs. Fairly low on that one. 77% agree, but you're in the 16th percentile. Our staff does a good job of educating our students. 94%, very high response from staff, but in the 15th percentile compared to everyone else. As you can imagine, most staff do feel good about the job they do, as they should. And so again, that's going to be a high scoring one no matter where you go. So everybody else had to be 95, 96, 97, 98% to put you in the 15th percentile on that. Then the next section was on support. This first one is really interesting because Steve and Emily directed me to your goals for the school year. And one of the district's goals were to making connections with students and addressing their mental health. Well, our school is a process to ensure every student has a connection with at least one adult in the school. And that was one of the strategies to address that goal. 95% agreed or strongly agreed, puts you in the 90th percentile. On that same question last year, you were in the 8th percentile. So bravo to the strategies that you used. It really made a difference. Good for you. And it was one of your main 3 goals for the year. The district seeks input from a broad group of staff members. 68% agreed, 71st percentile. District's heading in the right direction. 84%, 68th percentile. I feel supported by my supervisor or administrator when I make a decision. 90% agreed, 64th percentile. More support. District administration is doing what it takes to make our district successful. 79% agree, 54th percentile. School board is doing what it takes to make our district successful. 80% agree. So you've got good support from your staff, school board. But in the 51st percentile. District's pay practices are fair. Right in the middle of the road on that one, 52%, 47th percentile, and I'm recognized when I do a good job. More on support. All students in our school given equal opportunities to learn and experience success. 78% agreed, only the 21st percentile. Schools, the social and emotional needs of all students are met. 46% agree, 20th percentile. Our school supports students from diverse backgrounds, 79%, 11th percentile. I have the training and support to work with students with different backgrounds, 58%, 9th percentile. So on that one, 91% of the other districts responding, but we work with districts from all demographics. So inner city schools, all, it's comparing you to all of those. This one's interesting. Our parents in the community support the school district. Well, your staff is not so sure. They're at 53% and puts you in the 3rd percentile. That was your lowest percentile ranking of all of them. More on support. Different racial backgrounds. This is all about equity. Equity is a big topic in schools today. 85%, 22nd percentile. All genders are supported. 90% agree. Different cultural backgrounds. 80% agree. 11th percentile. Students with special needs. 82% agree. The 10th percentile. Different economic backgrounds. 83% agree, but only the 5th percentile on that one. So here's your top 5 scores based on, now this is not based on your comparison percentiles, this is based on the actual rating that your staff gave, okay? So I have a healthy working relationship, high score, 97% agreed. 4.42 on a 5-point scale. I have access to the technology support I need, 93%. 4.22 is the average score. Our school has a process to ensure every student has a connection with at least one adult at school. 95% agree. Again, one of your goals. High mark, 4.15 was the average. I feel comfortable sharing input and concerns with my supervisor and administrator. 88% agree. You were at 4.11, an average score, and I feel safe at work, 91%. Those are your top 5 scores. Here's your bottom 5 scores. Our staff handles student discipline in a consistent manner. I already heard a little discussion about that tonight. 58% agree, but this was one of your lower scores. Our school students' discipline practices and policies are effective. 54% or 3.03 average score. District's pay practices are fair. 52%, an average of 2.99 on the score. Our parents and community support the school district, 53%, 2.90, and the social and emotional needs of all students are being met. 46% agreed, 2.88 was your average score on that. Before I go on to this next section, because the next section was really, there are no comparison scores, because you heard Steve say there were a number of questions the district wanted to ask, so we customized this survey to answer your specific questions that they had. So we can't give you comparisons because these aren't questions we asked those other thousands of school districts, okay? But before I even go on to this section, on the earlier section, were there any questions that you had or something you saw that you want to know more about?
On the 5 categories you tracked prior year, can you go back
Yes.
further?
And I think, I'm going to look for it.
Because even though one year.
Oh, we can go back to, we can only, well, obviously we can only go to the years that you surveyed.
Right.
Yes, so we can go back to last year and every year going forward. One of the nice things too about school perceptions is Steve and Emily, your administrators, have access to this data all the time. They can filter, there's a filter option. So if they want to know, at my primary school, what percentage of my teachers answered this question specifically, what was the percentage? They click the filter, they go, I want to know just the primary school on this question. They hit filter, and they get the result right then and there. So it's great software in that you can quickly tell question by question at a school level or district level how people responded. The same thing works with our referendum questions. If you want to know how anybody 65 years or older responded to one of the survey questions on a referendum, quick click, you got the answer. It's really easy to do. Emily knows how to do it. Steve knows how to do it. Probably your principals know how to do that as well. If not, I can coach you on it. Okay? Emily's nodding her head. She's smiling. She knows it. Okay. Other questions before we go on? So now these are the questions that were specific to your district. When you have a question, you usually know where to find the answer. Well, yeah, 93% said they do. Only 7% said no. Now we could go back and filter that and see who that 7% were. I'm not going to try to guess that, but just know we could do that. What district spaces, if any of you, use to build? The district wanted to know, so where do you make your connections in the school? Well, not surprising, mostly in the classrooms when students aren't present, and of course in the staff lounge. So 73% between those two spots, everything else is IMC. Some people must stay in the rooms or whatever, or where their workstation is, and others had comments. There's also a comments section. We don't share the comment section at this level, but it is available. Steve and Emily have access to that, and your principals do as well. They also want to know more about health insurance, and probably like most districts, you want to know more about health insurance. Is there a way we can do this more cost effectively? And so that's what these questions are kind of about. If we added an employee plus one option. Steve, do you need to explain that to the board, or do they all understand what that is?
I think the board does, but just real quick to anybody else listening, it's been brought up instead of having just a single or a family plan, could we have, you know, an employee plus one other individual, whether it's a one child or a spouse, could we add that? So that's what this question was pertaining to. Is that something that they would be interested in?
I'm going to try to get out of here. I just said to your camera person here, I think I'm standing away from your camera the whole time. So when you look at that, highly unlikely, you know, that was the most common response, highly unlikely that they would do that. Possibly, but somewhat likely. Not very many were likely, only 15%. Then there was another one about what would you take the cash in lieu of health insurance? Well, when they ask the question, you're going to see later, you know, put a dollar figure to that, and they do that, that question. But just asking the question by itself, still highly unlikely, 43%. Possible but unlikely, you can read the numbers. And then there's a few that don't qualify for the insurance program, apparently. So then they put numbers to it. Well, for what if the family single plan were $5,000? What if the family single plan were $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $2,000, $3,000? Obviously, the higher the number, the more people are willing to try it. 52, a little over half your staff. Although this is, I think, giving you the answers you wanted, I'm not sure it's giving you a solution. Then, one of your other goals this year was about recruiting and retaining high-quality staff. And so the question came up is, well, what's our definition of a high-quality staff? And so the district did a really good job of looking at that. And obviously, collaboration, an employee that listens and makes connections with their colleagues and is positive with students, 97%. Collaboration, a high-quality employee fosters strong relationships with colleagues as well, and parents and the community as well. They show leadership. They share their knowledge. They're uplifting and inspiring in the community. All three of those were 97%. So a little difference on the average score, but not much. A high-quality employee wholeheartedly commits to being a valuable team player. 96% said that should be part of it. More on defining high quality. They call the category investment, but builds strong relationships, fosters trust between the school families and the wider community. 94%. Professional development. A high-quality employee demonstrates adaptability, responsiveness to change. And then in terms of culture and climate, 2 questions. High-quality employee makes calculated risk, applies creative problem solving, as well as a high-quality employee consistently exceeds job expectations. So, you know, read this, you look at this, you go, well, everything's in the 90% range, including this one on professional development. So it's all of these things. You know, I mean, the high score was 97%, the lowest score was 93%. So the good news is these things certainly define high quality. The staff agrees with it. I think if I was a staff member taking this survey, one of the things that would run through my head is, okay, how is this going to be used in terms of my evaluation? And so it creates a little bit of an edge there. But I think they're being very straightforward and honest what they see as being high quality. Okay, remember I told you earlier, I show you what happens when you give them a neutral option? There it is. On a scale of 1 to 10, extremely likely to extremely unlikely on a scale of 1 to 10, and look, 22% go number 5, right in the middle. I'm driving up here, I'm thinking, you know, my wife and I watch Wheel of Fortune every once in a while, and it seems like whenever there's a 1 to 10 score, 5 is the most popular, usually the most popular answer, unless it's something they have a strong opinion about. So that really bears out here too as well. So, you know, 70% of your staff are on the positive side, only about 8.5% below neutral. Your district average was 7.08. The comparison average, we do have a comparison on that. So you're higher than the comparison. The comparison average was 6.91, but your percentile is the 55th percentile, which bears out, which shows why you're in the upper half of that. So I'll open it up for questions again, and then I have one other document that I want to show you. It's not going to give you any new information, but it's a way we've come to share things with school leadership like yourself to kind of wade through all this stuff in a 2-page, what's this all mean in 2 pages? So I'll show you that next. And Emily, if you could call that up for me, I'd appreciate it. But any questions you have, anything you've seen?
We're always looking at improving with just you having more information on our data. Are there any areas of real concern that you have for us that this kind of stood out that you really need to get to work on this particular area?
Yeah, I think it really spells out in the top 5 and the bottom 5 scores that you received. If you go back to those scores, I know your administrative team will be looking at this data. One thing you can feel really good about is sometimes you work with the school district, they do the survey, but they don't do anything with it. And I always say, and Steve and Emily have heard me say this numerous times, is if you want people to take a survey, make sure you do something with it. Otherwise, next time you go up for a survey, they're going to say, why should I waste my 15 minutes to take this survey if you're not going to do anything about it? Your district has already demonstrated, when you jump from the 8th percentile to the 90th percentile for connecting with students, staff connecting with students in the school, that's amazing. That's huge. So that's something you should be celebrating. And I think this is a district that will use this data for future planning. So to answer your question, that was a long-winded answer. I would simply say go to those bottom 5 and say, okay, which of these could we make the biggest difference? How can we really make a difference here? There were questions about equity. There were questions about discipline, which I heard earlier in here. All those things. Your administrative team, along with you, are going to have to decide what are your goals for next year. But it was obvious to me that you set your goals for this year based on last year's survey. Good for you. Not everybody does that. And that's also why you have 97% response. Because, they actually read this and do something about it. And not everybody does. So this other, were you able to get it?
It's right here on the screen, but
Oh,
it's not
sure.
showing
There.
so we're-
Okay, well, it's no new information. Oh, that's weird.
Yeah.
Technology, don't you love it? You love it when it works and you hate it when it doesn't. Well, it's a sheet, like I said, 2 pages. You're not going to be able to see it where you're sitting. I can pass it around. It's 2 pages like this. And all it does is it takes you through the 5 indexes that I mentioned earlier and shows you your scores. Then shows you your top 3 strengths, and to address your question, your top 3 areas needing improvement. She's still trying? Okay, and then the second page is just recaptures that 1 to 10 scale as to, is this a good place of employment? And then the last chart, which is new information, it goes school by school, showing the current score and last year's score, and how they compare with our thousands of others, of those that have taken the survey. I can pass this around if you want. There's nothing. I'll just pass it. But again, the survey is very powerful. It's very easy to navigate it, to look at very specific things. Another example, say you're an elementary principal, you can ask, we have to be careful. Whenever the response is fewer than 3 people, we don't tell you the answer. Anybody know why? Right, anonymity. We're trying to keep, we protect anonymity on this. So principals, if you go in and sort through some of these things, you say, and maybe you only have I don't know how many fifth grade teachers you have, but you could say, I want to know how the fifth grade teachers, because back in the demographics, they told what grade they taught. I want to know how the fifth grade teachers answered this question. It'll tell you that as long as there were more than 3 people that answered it. But again, we work very hard to keep this anonymous. We don't see names. It's all, everybody gets a code, so it's all coded. So, and that gives people the assurance that they're not going to be singled out or judged based on their answers, which people want. Oh, there it is. Okay, it's back. Okay, so that's the first page I talked about. Oh, was it because it was a PDF file? Maybe, okay. Well, those are the index scores, but it's the same index scores I showed you earlier. If you scroll down, then here's your strengths and your weaknesses. But again, our whole purpose of putting this executive summary was to give a 2-page document rather than sorting through, because it's a lot of data. It's a lot of data. And then the last page gives your overall satisfaction and how the schools individually did. Their current score and their previous score. So, I've taken a lot of time, probably too much, right, Steve?
Good stuff.
No, I'm okay. All right. Any other questions or something you want to ask me?
I just have a question.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's really for you or if it's for Mr. Ward. So last year was the first time we did it. Did we do it, since I just got on the school board last year, did we do it before those years, or was last year the first time?
Last year was the first time.
I believe, didn't we?
Maybe
do it
years
back
ago.
in like 2018?
I could go back and look that answer up. I have a administrator's thing where I can go in and go district history, and it will tell me every year you've done anything. So I'll go look that up. You did?
We did do 2018, the survey was different at that time. The school consultant shortened their surveys to get a higher rate of participation, so the data isn't quite comparable because the survey was quite different and much, much longer and much less.
Thank you.
That was one of my dilemmas when we shared standardized test scores. They kept changing the test. And the board would say, well, how does this compare to last year? Well, they changed the test again. So, yeah. But we'll be consistent with this one for a long time. And you have but you still, I mean, if you did the survey in 2003 with us, when we first started, that information is archived, it's still out there. So I could tell you right away how many years you did it and how far back it goes. But there was a gap for a while. Obviously from 18 to last year that the survey was taken.
Well, what is information for you to point out?
Is it uploaded yet?
No, but I can do that.
It will be shortly, yes.
Are we good? Thank you. Thank you for being on our school board. Thank you, school administrators. Hard work. Hard work for everybody. But it makes a difference. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Emily.
Thank you. The January pupil membership count.
All right, so Mr. Bosworth will give a brief presentation on where we're sitting from a pupil enrollment count from our second official count this January. We do one the third Friday in September, one the second Friday in January.
Okay, in your Board Docs website, there are a little bit of narrative and some data in graph form. So we'll talk about that. As Mr. Board said, there's 2 times in the school year we have to take enrollment counts for DPI purposes. And then, so 3rd Friday in the fall, 2nd Friday in January, and then summer school. We also report enrollment there. And then the DPI uses kind of an average of all those three things together with a formula, and that's what drives our revenue limit, those numbers. This is a membership count, so this is a count of all the students living in our school district who are basically attending public schools somewhere. All residents, basically 4-year-old, 18 years old. Okay, as you look at this table, just some things to point out. The estimated number, this is, we use a Baird model, and then we also had UW Population Lab come here and show us 5 different models, so we kind of take an average of those and use those to kind of estimate. So these were our estimates coming into this school year. Last spring, when we estimated, these were the numbers we thought we were going to have. So we're kind of doing the same thing as we cast forward into next year as well. DPI numbers, of course, these are the enrollment counts. That's what that column is. So September and January. And again, that's a membership count. And then finally, in building, so these are the kids who are in our building. They're in our seats, they're in the ROA, they're in the partner school. They're our students, Richland students. So this may be one thing to take away from these numbers. Our membership count in the fall was 1296, in January was 1294. So essentially the same. Really no big changes there. You can see some various changes at different grade levels, but overall basically the same. I would point this out. This is a nice positive trend. The open enrollment numbers out decreased by 7. And we're always looking to have that change in the right direction. The next table, this is 6-7 year comparison here of simply the change from fall to winter, from September to January. How those counts typically change? And kind of like I was saying here, the average change over the last 6 or 7 years has been minus 1.3 students. And we were at -2, so we're being typical there. Our enrollment from fall to spring, or from September to January, is typically the same on average, and ours was. And then a couple of other tables to look at. The net open enrollment as a percentage of residents. If you're trying to open this in board docs, it won't open. So it's extremely problematic for me, so I just plopped it in the narrative. That's why that's the only one in there. This one had some gremlins for whatever reason. Net open enrollment, right? So we have more students open enroll out than come in. So that's why these percentages are negative. And this is just showing over the last 5 years, what does this look like as a percentage of our total residents? So about -11% of our students are open enrolling out. And we'd like to see that close to the 0. You should understand there are some districts that this graph line would be above 0, where they have more students open enroll in than open enroll out. So we're all aware of the difference there. Second thing to point out, some 5-year trends for open enrollment. Fairly steady. I mean, there isn't a lot of movement to these two lines. But I will say, the numbers coming in, it's a slight positive movement for us. It's moving in the right direction. And the numbers going out, also decreasing slightly. So for 23-24, both of those lines are trending in the right direction, but still a lot of work to be done. And then the final graph to point out is a 5-year enrollment trend. So this we saw the graphs that the UW Population Lab showed us, so this kind of mirrors that. Our enrollment, our membership count, the number of students in our school district has been declining for a number of years. It's a demographic thing. And our in-building count basically mirrors that. We've known that, and we know that the biggest classes are at the high school level, and then they'll drop off after that. So just kind of an update of what the enrollment membership numbers showed. Are there any questions?
Action items, the approval of RCHS overloads for 2023-24.
Okay, when we did the transfers and vacancies, I had mentioned that we had the resignation of a world language teacher. We have a plan, well, we're still looking for somebody to fill that vacancy. It will be problematic to fill a world language teacher in the middle of the school year. But we did have to come up with a plan for the third quarter, which we are currently in. And that plan is to take one of our current teachers that has a prep during the time when the world language teacher was teaching upper level Spanish, and do kind of a hybrid of them doing some online options while having this teacher as a tutor for those two classes. And so with that, we would need the approval of an overload position to cover that. We are still trying to figure out what we're going to be doing for quarter four. We will bring that back at a later date when we determine that plan. High school administration has a plan in place, but for the third quarter, we've got a plan. I think it's a fairly good plan, all things considered, but it would require an overload position to be added for the third quarter. And the percentages in there just reflect the actual, a true overload. One overload, 100% overload, is for the whole year. And so when you combine the block and you combine it into just a quarter, and actually in this case even a portion of a quarter, that's where you get the goofy overload. The actual overload is a 43.48% of an overload. So that would be the recommendation.
Is there a motion to approve an overload Spanish teaching position for quarter three at Richland Center High School for the 2023-24 school year?
I so move.
Motion made by Mrs. Dickman. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mr. Wertz, or Mrs. Wertz, sorry. Is there any questions for Mr. Ford? I was going with that one. Any discussion or questions for Mr. Gordon? All right. Mrs. Wertz?
Aye.
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 2024-25 staffing plans.
Okay, some historical information on this. Back in the 21-22 school year, specifically in the second semester of 2022, the committee and the board decided to use some ESSER funding to keep some staff around for the following year, the 22-23 school year, and to even add some staff from what was planned. And so at that point, the board decided for the 22-23 school year to add 14 FTE, full-time equivalent staffing, to be used over 2 years. And if we could get 7 each year, great. Administration came back and asked if that could be front-loaded a little bit, knowing the learning loss coming off of the pandemic. And so the goal was, which the board approved, to add 10 FTE for 22-23, and then 4 in 23-24. But if we were unable to fill all 10 of those positions, that they would carry over to the next year. And so that's exactly what happened. While we didn't fill all 10 of them, we did fill 8.5 of those 14 positions in the 22-23 school year. That left us with 5.5. That's exactly what we have filled for this school year. through different positions. And those positions then are set to expire as the ESSER allocations will expire at the end of the 23-24 school year this June. Okay, and so as we now fast forward into what are we going to do for 24-25? We have a pending operational referendum out there, and if that passes, we would like to keep those 5.5 positions as part of our school. They may not be the exact positions, there may be some shifting that's needed, but at least have the personnel, and for the most part follow the plan that we have. I should note that regardless of whether the operational referendum in April passes or fails, the plan has been all along to go down one administrative or upper management position. We went down one for the start of the 23-24 school year, this school year, and then the plan is to go down one next year as well by not filling the IT director position created by Todd Ostrander's retirement. Okay, and so regardless, we would be going down that position. So the 5.5 that we're talking about is excluding that administrative position. So what's the ask? The ask is that we consider actually two plans. One, if the referendum fails in April, and one if the referendum passes in April. Remember that by state law, we can only ask 2 referendum questions in a calendar year. We are using both of those questions in this April. One is an operational, one is a capital improvement. So if they fail, if either one of them fails, we would not be able to go back to referendum until the January 1st, 2025. Okay, and so if it fails, we are prepared. Well, it will certainly impact student learning. Well, it will certainly be a sting to us, no pun intended, given the fact that we're Hornets, but we will have to go down 5.5 FTE unless we are prepared to operate out of fund balance, which is not something I would recommend. We've got a healthy fund balance, but we can't survive operating out of fund balance for long periods of time. And so if it fails, that we would go down 5.5 FTE, basically those ESSER-funded positions, or at least as a result of that. While if it passes, then we would be able to maintain our current teaching staff numbers. We would still reduce the administrative upper management position by the 1 FTE, but then we would maintain those 5.5 positions. So I know we have to kind of travel down 2 pathways, but we do need some direction from the board on what we're looking at doing. This is what we would be telling the public that we would be doing. If the operational doesn't pass, that's the consequence that would happen. In order to get closer to a balanced budget, we would have to reduce our teaching staff by the 5.5 positions. If it passes, we can maintain it. What questions do you have? Before you ask any questions, I should also point out that this would exclude any special education staff that may be needed as a result of an IEP. Student moves in, student moves out. Those are constantly being evaluated, and as you know, Mr. Josem has had to come to the board throughout the course of the school year historically to address those needs. It is also not considering the partner school. If we expand the enrollment of the partner school, we may need one additional support down there, depending on how many people we actually get and what the board is looking at and how quickly they want to expand that. So it does not include either of those. However, you're not making a commitment to those. Those would come back individually back to the board if we say, hypothetically, we have 27 people that want to enroll in the partner school, we need one more adult there. Then the board would look at that ask independently from the rest. The same would be true if we had to add something in the form of special education. So excluding those 2 entities, those are the 2 options, whether the referendum in April passes or fails as it relates to the operational. The capital passes or fails, those have different consequences, but not related to staffing. What questions do you have for me?
Is there a motion to approve the 2024-25 staffing plan as presented?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Bailey, is there a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Doudna. Any other questions, discussion? Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
I'll make a motion to move into closed session pursuant to section 19.851 C, E, and/or F, and of the Wisconsin statutes 118.125, to consider employment, promotion, compensation of employees, discussing individual employee hiring and administrator evaluations, and to discuss individual student discipline and student open enrollment, applications, and individual pupil information related to those applications. The board may take action on these issues in closed session if necessary and appropriate. At the conclusion of the closed session, the board will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Troxel. Discussion? Mr. Bailey?
Aye.
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 Aye.